Owen Hartley was not a man who did things out of spite. That was what he told himself, anyway. Standing in his corner office on the 22nd floor of Hartley Capital, holding a cream-colored envelope he had not asked for and did not want. The invitation was from Melissa Folds, not Melissa Hartley. She had made that clear enough when she ended their engagement 14 months ago, without so much as a conversation, just a voicemail. 3 minutes and 40 seconds, and then nothing. Now she was marrying Gordon Vachon, some Bay Street finance type, with a family name older than Confederation. And she had sent Owen an invitation the way you'd send one to a distant cousin you didn't actually want there but couldn't leave off the list. His assistant, Brendan, had left it on his desk without comment, which Owen appreciated. He didn't need anyone's sympathy. He needed, he decided, not to look like a man who'd spent the last 14 months quietly rebuilding himself in an empty condo. He called his friend Patrick, who listened to the whole thing without interrupting, which was unusual for Patrick. "So go," Patrick said when he was done. "I'm not going alone." "Then don't go alone. That's helpful. Take someone. Take anyone. Take someone who'll make her wonder what she missed." Owen set the invitation down on the glass surface of his desk. It was a reasonable idea. A terrible one, but reasonable. He was still thinking about it that evening when he left the office and walked the 2 blocks to where he'd parked. It was October in Toronto, the kind of cold that comes in off the lake and finds every gap in your coat. And he was moving fast with his hands in his pockets when he nearly stepped on her. She was sitting against the wall of a closed dry cleaner, a canvas bag between her knees and a paperback open in her lap. She wasn't holding a sign. She wasn't asking for anything. She just looked up when his shadow crossed her, and her eyes were— Owen didn't know exactly how to put it, even later. Irritated, maybe, the way someone looks when you interrupt them mid-sentence. "Sorry," he said, though he hadn't actually touched her. "You're fine," she said, and looked back at her book. He stood there a moment longer than was normal. "Do you need?" "No." She turned a page. "But thank you." He didn't know why he didn't walk away. He had somewhere to be. He had Adriver waiting. He had, at a minimum, the common sense to recognize that crouching down to talk to a stranger, reading a paperback in an alley beside a dry cleaner, was not behavior typical of a man who ran a $200 million asset management firm. "I wasn't going to offer money," he said. She looked up again, slightly less irritated now. "Evaluating. Then what were you going to offer?" "I'm not sure yet." She studied him with the particular focus of someone who has learned to read people quickly and accurately, which is what you learn when you have no margin for error. "You look like you're about to ask me something embarrassing," she said. Owen almost laughed. He hadn't laughed in a while. "Probably," he admitted. Her name was Dara. She didn't offer a last name, and he didn't ask. And within 20 minutes he had explained the situation with a degree of candor that surprised him, and she had listened without the pity or the amusement he'd expected. "So you want someone to make your ex-fiancée jealous," she said. "I want to walk in there not looking like someone she got away from." "That's the same thing." He didn't argue. "Are you interested?" Dara was quiet for a moment, looking at him the way people look at something they haven't decided about yet. "What does it pay?" He named a number. She didn't flinch, which told him either the number was right or she was very good at not flinching. "One condition," she said. "I'm not a prop. If I'm there, I'm actually there. I talk to people. I make my own decisions about the room. You don't whisper stage directions at me all night." "Agreed." "Then I'm interested," she said. "But curious about what kind of man makes this kind of offer." "What kind is that?" She picked up her paperback and tucked it into her canvas bag. "The kind who thinks money is the same thing as leverage." He had no answer for that, but he noticed she stood up. The next afternoon, Owen took her to a boutique on Bloor that he'd walked past for years without entering, and the stylist, a precise woman named Helene, who had dressed 3 of his former colleagues' wives, took one look at Dara and went quiet in a way that people go quiet when they're rearranging their assumptions. Owen stepped back and let them work. He sat in a leather chair and answered emails he'd been ignoring, and tried not to think about why he'd done this. When they called him back 40 minutes later, he put the phone down. Dara was standing in front of the 3-panel mirror in a deep charcoal dress that fit the way clothes fit people in magazines, and she was looking at her reflection with an expression so calm it was almost strange. Not vanity, not surprise, something closer to recognition. "You've done this before," Owen said, before he could stop himself. She met his eyes in the mirror. Done what? This, he gestured vaguely. Looked like this. She was quiet for a moment. I used to, she said, and turned away from the mirror. He wanted to ask more. She was already asking Helene about the shoes. The Vachon Folds wedding was held at the Hazelton Manor, which was exactly the kind of venue that announced itself before you walked through the door. Black town cars, valets in burgundy vests, a photographer crouching at the entrance to catch every arrival. Owen had attended 3 events here, and he hated all 3, which was perhaps why he was a little more composed than he'd expected. Dara stepped out of the car and he watched, without meaning to, as the small cluster of people near the entrance went quiet. She didn't notice. Or she did notice, and had simply stopped cataloging it. Follow my lead, he said quietly, falling into step beside her. She tilted her head without turning toward him. You said no stage directions. That wasn't a stage direction. That was general advice. She accepted a glass of champagne from a passing tray with the ease of someone who had done it 1,000 times. I'll figure it out. They were barely inside before Owen saw Melissa. She was across the room, in ivory lace that had probably cost more than Owen's first car, and she was looking at him the way people look when they're trying very quickly to process something unexpected. Her gaze moved to Dara and stayed there. Owen felt, for the first time in 14 months, something other than the dull weight of things unsaid. He steered them across the room at an unhurried pace. Owen, Melissa said. Her smile was perfect and her eyes were working hard. I wasn't sure you'd come. Of course, he said. I wanted to celebrate. Melissa's gaze slid to Dara again, waiting. This is Dara, Owen said. Dara extended her hand. Congratulations, marriage takes real courage. I always admired people who tried it twice. She paused, just long enough. Oh, forgive me. I'm thinking of someone else. Melissa's smile didn't change, but something behind it did. Her fiancé Gordon appeared, and they were all briefly cordial, and then Gordon wanted champagne and they dispersed, and Owen found himself standing beside Dara near the windows, looking out at the courtyard lights. You told me no stage directions, he said. That wasn't a stage direction, she said. That was just the truth. She took a sip of champagne. She looked at you like she wasn't expecting you to be fine. I'm not fine. I know, Dara said. But you look it. Tonight, that's what matters. She moved away to speak to someone, a white-haired man in a dark suit who Owen recognized vaguely as a former provincial cabinet minister. And within 3 minutes the man was laughing at something she'd said and flagging down a colleague to include in the conversation. Owen watched her. A business acquaintance appeared at his shoulder. Who's your friend, Dara? Owen said. She's extraordinary, yes, Owen said. She was. He didn't know what to do with that. Later, Melissa found him alone near the bar, which he suspected was intentional. She's interesting, Melissa said, not bothering with preamble. Where did you meet her? Why? Melissa turned her champagne glass slowly. Because she looks like someone I used to know, and because she walked into my wedding like she owns the place. She walks everywhere like that. Melissa looked at him with something that wasn't quite regret and wasn't quite anything else. You seem different, Owen. You seem happy, he said. I hope you are. It was the most honest thing he'd said to her in years, including when they were together. He left her with it and went to find Dara. In the car afterward, they were both quiet for a while. She thought she recognized you, Owen said. Dara was looking at the city lights passing on the other side of the window. I know. Was she right? The silence went on long enough that he thought she wouldn't answer. Possibly, she said. He watched her profile. Who are you, Dara? Someone who's still figuring that out, she said. And then she turned from the window and looked at him directly. I know that's not enough of an answer. No, he said. It's not. Then ask me again when you've earned it. He had her brought to the hotel he'd booked for the week. A proper suite, not charity, he told himself, though the distinction was blurring. And he sat in the car for a while after she'd gone in, drumming his fingers on his knee. He called his investigator before he was fully aware he was doing it. I need you to find someone, he said. First name Dara, no last name, Toronto. Start 6 months ago and work backward. What am I looking for? Everything. The next morning he arrived at her hotel room with coffee, which she accepted with the wariness of someone who recognized a power move. You're checking on me, she said. I brought you breakfast. You're checking on me and you brought me breakfast. She stepped aside to let him in. The room was neat in the specific way of someone who is used to having very little and treats what they have with care. You didn't sleep here long, he said. How would you know? He looked at the bed. Perfectly made. You made the bed. People make beds, Owen. Not at 6 in the morning in a hotel. She sat down in the armchair by the window and wrapped both hands around the coffee. What did you want to talk about? I ran a check on you. She was still. And? Nothing, he said. You don't exist. No address, no employer, no financial trail after 2 years ago. Like someone drew a line and stepped over it. He sat across from her. What's on the other side of that line? Dara looked at him for a long moment. He had the impression of someone choosing very carefully what door to open. My father's name was Vincent Kellerman, she said. He ran Kellerman Property Group. Maybe you've heard of it. Owen had. It had been mid-sized and well-regarded, and then, about 3 years ago, it had collapsed spectacularly under allegations of financial mismanagement that had resulted in 2 criminal charges, a civil suit, and the kind of coverage that follows a family name for decades. He was set up, Dara said. It was stated flatly as fact, not plea. Someone inside his company had been redirecting funds for over a year. When it came out, my father was already too sick to defend himself properly. The lawyers bled us dry. He died without clearing his name. Owen kept his voice careful. Who was responsible? Dara turned her coffee cup in her hands. Melissa Folds, she said. She was a strategic partner on the Kellerman side for 18 months. She brokered the deal that gave her access to the accounts, and then she walked away clean and let my father take the fall. Owen was very still. You didn't show up on that sidewalk by accident, he said. I've been watching Melissa's circle for 8 months, looking for a way in. She met his eyes. You were, unexpected, you used me. I chose you, she said, which was somehow different. And I told you at the beginning I was curious. I wasn't lying about that. He stood up. He walked to the window. Toronto in the morning, glass towers going copper in the early light, which was very beautiful and not at all relevant. What do you want from her? He asked. Evidence, Dara said. There are documents. My father's assistant kept copies of certain emails before everything was destroyed. The assistant's name is Clifford Denton, and he's been too frightened to come forward. But if I can get to him, and if I can get access to the right server, there's a holding company Melissa set up through a numbered firm. It's still active. The paper trail is there. Owen turned around. That's not a small thing, no, she agreed. You need access to people I know. Systems my contacts can reach, yes, and in exchange? Dara set down her coffee. I go away quietly when it's done. You never see me again. He looked at her for a long time. She looked back at him the way she'd looked at him on that sidewalk, directly, without apology, with the watchful steadiness of someone who has stopped being surprised by the world. No, he said. She blinked. No, that's not an acceptable exchange. He picked up his coat. I'll help you, but you don't get to offer me nothing and call it a deal. He was at the door when she said, Then what do you want? He stopped. He thought about it genuinely. Time, he said, to figure out if this is what I think it is. He left her with that and went to make phone calls. Let's play a little game. Type the word maple in the comments if you've made it this far. Only the real ones will know. Owen's investigator confirmed the numbered company within 48 hours. The paper trail was faint but continuous. The kind of thing that looks like nothing until you know what you're looking at. Clifford Denton, the assistant, was living in Barrie now, working at a hardware store, and when Owen's associate reached him, it took 2 conversations and the assurance that he would not be left exposed before he agreed to hand over what he had. What he had was damning. Emails, account routing records, a memo written in Melissa's own hand, not her signature, but her syntax, her cadence, unmistakably, that outlined the transfer structure that had drained the Kellerman accounts over 14 months while the paper trail was systematically rerouted to Vincent Kellerman's name. Owen sat with it for a day before he told Dara. When he showed her, she was very quiet. She read everything twice, carefully, and then she set the documents on the table and pressed both hands flat against the surface. This is enough, she said. For a lawyer, yes, she looked up. You said yes to helping me. I did. Why? He'd been thinking about how to answer that for 3 days. Because your father deserved better, he said. And because I was almost married to someone I didn't actually know. Those 2 things are related. She was quiet for a moment. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone who used money as a substitute for understanding people. She looked at the documents again. You're still that person. But not only, he wasn't sure if it was a compliment. He thought probably it was. Melissa's people reached out 3 days later. A call to Owen's office. Not Owen directly, but his associate Patrick, which meant she was nervous enough to be indirect. She'd heard, through the particular velocity of information in their circle, that someone was asking questions about the Kellerman collapse. She wanted to meet. Owen agreed, and brought Dara. They met at a restaurant on King Street, neutral territory that wasn't quite neutral because Melissa had chosen it, which Owen logged and said nothing about. Melissa arrived composed and left her coat on, which meant she was ready to leave quickly. "I understand you've been looking into some old business," she said, speaking to Owen and looking at Dara. "Dara has a particular interest," Owen said. Melissa's focus sharpened. "Who are you exactly?" "Vincent Kellerman's daughter," Dara said. The name landed in Melissa's expression the way a stone lands in water. A split second of movement she couldn't control before everything went still again. "I'm sorry about your father," Melissa said. "It was a difficult." "You set him up," Dara said. "We have the account routing records, the memos, and a witness who was there when you gave the instructions. We have enough for a criminal referral, and we're prepared to take it tomorrow if you'd prefer to do this the hard way." Melissa looked at Owen. "Is this a shakedown?" "It's a question," Owen said. "One chance to do the right thing." There was a long, unpleasant silence. "What do you want?" Melissa asked. "A public correction," Dara said. "My father's name cleared through whatever mechanism your lawyer recommends, and a statement to the civil court that the liability rests with you, not the estate." She paused. "That's it." Melissa stared at her. "That's it." "I'm not interested in your money," Dara said. "I have my own plans for that." Whatever Melissa had expected, it wasn't that. She looked at Dara for a long moment with something that was not quite respect but was its uncomfortable neighbor. "I'll need a week," she said. "You have 5 days," Owen said. She left her tea untouched. On the way out, Dara was quiet until they reached the street. "That was easier than I expected," she said. "She's practical," Owen said. "Corrupt but practical. It's cheaper to comply than to fight something that's already documented." Dara nodded. She was looking at the street and not at him. "Are you all right?" he asked. "I don't know." She exhaled. "I thought it would feel bigger than that." "It usually doesn't," he said. "The actual moment. It's smaller than the years of building to it." She looked at him sideways. "You sound like you know." "I've had a few smaller than expected moments," he said. She almost smiled. "Almost. Let's try another one. Type Celsius in the comments. Because we do things right in this country." Melissa's lawyer delivered the documentation in 4 days. A formal statement acknowledging her role in the financial redirection that had resulted in wrongful charges against Vincent Kellerman. A letter to the courts. A correction to the public record. Dara read it standing at Owen's kitchen counter, very early in the morning, because he'd called her when it arrived and she'd come. She read it once. Then she set it down and stood very still with her hand flat on the counter. Owen let the silence go. He understood that some things needed room. "He didn't die knowing," she said finally. "No," Owen said, "but people who cared about him will know now." She nodded slowly. Something in her face had changed, not broken but softened, like something that had been held rigid for a very long time and had been given at last permission to ease. He moved to stand beside her. Not touching, just nearby. "What do you do now?" he asked. "I had a corporate law degree before all of this," she said. "I was 2 years into articling when the collapse happened. I walked away. I couldn't." She stopped. "I couldn't sit in an office building while my father was being destroyed in another office building." She picked up the letter and folded it carefully. "I think I'd like to go back to it." "You'd be very good," he said. She looked at him. "You don't know that. I know how you handle a room. I know how you read people." He paused. "I know you read paperbacks in alleys and don't ask for anything. That's not a qualification, it's a character reference." She laughed. Quietly, genuinely, the kind of laugh that isn't performed. He had been waiting, without quite knowing it, to hear her laugh. "You said you wanted time," she said. "I did, to figure out if this was what you thought it was." "Yes." She looked at him steadily. There was no strategy in it now. No walls. Just Dara, watching him with that same directness she'd had from the beginning, except that now he knew what was behind it. The grief she'd been carrying, the years of careful, exhausting vigilance, and underneath all of it, something that had not gone out. "And," she said. "It's what I thought it was," he said. She was quiet for a moment. "I'm not easy," she said. "I know. I'll argue with you. Frequently, I imagine. I don't actually need saving. I never did. I know that too, he said. I wasn't offering to save you. I was offering to be in the room. She looked at him for another long moment, and then she closed the small distance between them, and when she reached up and held his face in both hands, it felt like the most deliberate thing either of them had done in years. Months later, when people asked, and people did ask, because their story had the shape of the kind of story people repeat, Owen usually said they met through mutual connections, which was technically true and entirely unsatisfying. Dara always said, "We met because he almost stepped on my book." She went back to law. Not articling this time. She opened a small practice focused on financial misconduct cases, the kind of work that required exactly the combination of things she happened to have: precision, patience, and the particular ruthlessness of someone who knows exactly what it costs when the system fails. Her office was in the East End, nothing fancy, and she kept a reading chair in the corner that had nothing to do with the practice and everything to do with who she was. Owen renovated his condo. He was not sure why it had taken him 2 years to get a couch he actually liked. But Dara had opinions about furniture that turned out to be opinions he agreed with, and that seemed to say something. They had an argument once about whether to accept an invitation to a charity gala that Melissa Folds, now Melissa Vachon, married 6 months, conspicuously not on Bay Street anymore, was also attending. Owen thought they should go. Dara thought it was unnecessary. "We don't need to prove anything," she said. "I know," he said, "but it might be enjoyable." She looked at him for a moment with an expression he had come to understand was her trying not to smile. They went. Melissa saw them. She left early. On the way home, Dara took his hand in the back of the car and looked out the window at the city, which in December had the particular quality of a city that has learned to make itself beautiful in the cold, and she said, quietly, as if she were still thinking it through, "He would have liked you." Owen didn't need to ask who. He just kept her hand in his. Some things take years to arrive. Some things look like accidents until you understand them. And some things, the ones that matter, the ones that last, begin on a cold October evening with a man who almost steps on a woman's book and a woman who doesn't say thank you because she doesn't owe it, and a silence between them that, years later, neither of them could quite explain except to say it felt like something. Even then, it felt like something.